explorers, I have a question for you. Have you ever considered how it's almost impossible to live on Earth while not changing the environment around you at the same time? All living organisms need 4 things to survive: water, food, air, and shelter for protection. In the journey to acquire all of these things, organisms can have positive and negative impacts on the world around them. These impacts can affect other living organisms too. This is the concept of an ecosystem, or the interactions between living and non-living things within their community. For example, let's follow the journey that starts with a hungry bird who's looking for the juiciest cherry on a cherry tree. It eats the whole fruit, pit included, and then it flies away in search of more to eat, maybe some insects. As it flies, it poops out the seeds that were not digested, which then fall from 100 feet up in the air and land in a whole new area on the side of, let's say, a riverbank with no cherry trees. If the soil provides a good habitat for a seedling, then many years later, it will grow into a big cherry tree that stands 20 feet tall, towering over the grass and bushes that were there before. This new tree has now provided a lot more shade to the area, which also provides more animals with shelter and habitats. The roots have grown bigger and wider too, and act like fingers holding onto the soil, protecting it from washing away. This new tree has now stabilized the riverbank, improved water quality, and provided more habitats for new species of animals. What an impact, right? Speaking of rivers, there is one species that is one of the most famous biobuilders in the animal kingdom, the beaver. They're what ecologists call a keystone species. Hold on, that term comes from the concept of a keystone in engineering, which is a strategically placed stone that holds the whole arch together, and if taken away, the whole thing falls down. Okay, let's go back. An ecosystem can work the same way. A keystone species has a large impact on their ecosystem, even if there is only a small number of them. In the beaver's journey of finding food, water, and shelter, it will create a dam across a river. This drastically changes the flow of the water, creating wetlands where tons of other species can thrive too. Also, beavers have made big news lately for their role to help fight climate change. The wetlands they create make it harder for wildfires to spread so drastically. And wetlands also absorb tons of carbon, and they store it away out of the atmosphere. Did you know that beavers were actually once considered a pest? In the past, their numbers dropped drastically due to overhunting. And as you can imagine, their removal threatened the stability of entire ecosystems around North America. Humans quickly realized this, and ever since, their numbers have drastically increased through conservation. Even here in Colorado, I see more and more signs of beavers every year. There are keystone species for every ecosystem, but one of my other favorites is the parrot fish. These are a type of marine fish that eat the macroalgae that grow on top of coral in the ocean. So what would happen to the coral reefs if parrotfish were removed? Well, first, you have to understand that coral are living organisms that get their food from tiny photosynthetic organisms called zooxanthellae that live within their cells. So if macroalgae isn't consistently removed by the hungry parrotfish, the coral can be smothered by it, covering up the zooxanthellae, which can starve it to death. And since about 25% of all ocean life relies upon coral reefs, and it's one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet, it could have big effects. And if you've ever been able to play in the sand around the Caribbean or Hawaii, here's a fun fact. The majority of the white sand that makes up those beaches comes from parrotfish poop. They crunch on the coral while eating algae, and it continues to go through them undigested. So thanks, parrotfish. So they're providing a lot of benefits to plants, animals, and humans. It's not always easy to see some keystone species in the wild, but like I mentioned before, every organism has some effect on their environment. One of the most common ecosystem engineers that we can easily see are birds. We mentioned before that they can spread seeds for plants into new areas, but they can also change their environment by building nests. There are tons of different types of nests, from those on the ground, underground, on top of water, and in treetops, to name a few. Birds collect and move materials all over to construct the perfect nest for them. So in this week's activities, I want you to experience what it's like to make a bird's nest. But don't worry, I won't make you use your beaks. We'll also explore how humans can impact the environment in both negative and positive ways. And I hope you will be inspired to appreciate the ways that living creatures change the world around us, as well as our roles as the ultimate ecosystem engineers and conservationists. So let's get to adventuring. Go have some fun.